In this video, we're going to talk about a fundamental component of Python, functions. A function is a named operation which in Python can also serve as an operand. Functions are executed when they're called. Syntactically speaking, a function call is a function name followed by a pair of parentheses. If a function is designed to receive inputs, those inputs, which are called arguments, can be passed to the function by including them between the parentheses in a function call. This is identical to what you might be familiar with in Excel. In this case, we're looking at the print function, which produces a text output when you execute it, followed by a couple of parentheses, and then a single argument, the string of text which says, "My name is Zach." So in syntactic terms, this whole line of code is a function call. Apart from its arguments, a function call is an operator. And I'm not using that term syntactically. I mean, in terms of logical operations, a function call is not an operand, it is an operator. It is a trigger of a logical operation. The arguments in a function call are operands, the inputs upon which an operation is performed. What I mean to say is there's no essential difference between a function call apart from its arguments and an operator like the plus symbol or the multiplication symbol. To demonstrate that point, I've created a custom function here called multiply, which performs multiplication on a couple of arguments, x and y. If I execute this function call, it multiplies 3 and 5, or I could replace that with 8 and 4, and it'll give me 32. So this function is performing the same operation as the asterisk, which triggers multiplication. I can execute that to get 15, or I can change my inputs to 8 and 4 and get 32. This multiply function and the asterisk symbol are identical. So apart from its arguments, a function call is an operator, not in terms of Python syntax, but in terms of the role it plays in defining logical operations. You're not limited to passing single values as arguments to a function. You can pass expressions to functions as arguments. When you do that, the Python interpreter will first evaluate the expression before passing its result to the function. So if I give 4 divided by 7 to the print function, it's not going to display 4 divided by 7. It will calculate this division and then output the result. Different functions are designed to receive different numbers of arguments. Some functions can operate without any arguments. So here I've written the print function 3 times. I've commented out the second time. So the interpreter will ignore everything to the right of this pound symbol. The first time I execute this cell, it'll only execute the first print function and the second one. So when I execute this cell, I see line 1 and line 2. Both of these function calls contain an argument. The second one doesn't. So if I remove that pound symbol so that the interpreter executes this second print call, I have added a blank line in between line 1 and line 2. What you see is that this does not cause a problem. It's okay to call the print function without any argument, and the result is that it adds a blank line. Other functions don't work like that. Here I have the round function. If I pass it 4 divided by 7 as its argument, it will round the result of that division up to the nearest integer, which is 1. If I remove the argument from round and try to execute it, the interpreter raises a type error and tells me that round is missing a required argument. Some functions allow you to modify their operation by passing optional arguments in addition to required arguments. Different arguments have to be separated by a comma, just like Excel. In this case, I'm passing a second optional argument to the round function, which is separated from the first argument by a comma, like Excel. And in this case, this second argument modifies the precision of the round function. So I'm telling the round function to round the result of the first argument, 4 divided by 7, to 2 decimal places. When I execute this cell, I see that's what I get. Functions can identify their arguments by position, name, or both. Arguments that are identified by name are called keyword arguments, which is sometimes abbreviated as KWARGS, QWARGs. Earlier, these arguments that I passed to the round function were identified by their position. But I can identify both of those arguments by their name as well. The first argument is called number. The second is in digits, short for number of digits. If I execute this cell, I get the same result. And because I've named these arguments, I can change their position. And that does not change the operation of this function. If I removed the names of these arguments and try to execute this function, I'll get a type error because I'm passing the result of 4 divided by 7, which is 0.5 something, to the number of digits argument. And you can't round a result to 0.5 decimal places. That argument needs to be an integer. The print function gives us an example of an argument that can only be identified by its name, the end argument. The print function is designed to display any number of arguments separated by commas. If I execute this function call, I get all 5 of the arguments that I inputted. I could keep going for any number of arguments, and each one of them would be displayed in this way. For that reason, if I want to modify the operation of the print function using the end argument, I need to make that explicit by including the name of this argument. We saw up above that when I call the print argument by itself, it inserts a blank line. That's because the print argument is designed to insert a blank line at the end of every output. The end argument modifies the character that the print function adds to the end of each output. In this case, I'm adding an exclamation point, so when I execute this, the print function gives me "it worked" plus an exclamation point at the end, and it does not add a new line, so that if I called the print function again, rather than displaying on a new line, the output of the second print function call will display on the same line. Arguments identified by position must precede arguments identified by name. If I try to put a positional argument after a keyword argument, Python raises a syntax error. If I switch this order back around, I can execute the function without a problem. If you're not familiar with a function, you can learn about it inside your program by displaying its documentation with the help function. You pass the name of the function that you want to learn about to the help function like this, so that when I execute this cell, I see the round function name followed by its arguments in parentheses. This is how I can learn the names of these arguments. You'll see that in digits is followed by the equal sign and none, which tells me that this argument has a default value of none, which tells me that that's an optional argument. I don't have to pass that argument to my function in order to call it, but I can modify it if I want to. The documentation describes what this function does, and it also tells us something we might not have known before, that the number of digits argument may be negative. We can round a number to a negative number of digits. What does that mean? Well, we could try it down here and pass the round function 12,345 with a number of digits of -3. When I execute that, the number is rounded to the nearest thousands place. So that's one example of how you can learn about functions by passing them as an argument to the help function. You can find more comprehensive function documentation in the official Python library reference, which we'll link below this video. That's it for this quick introduction to Python functions. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give the video a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.